One of the biggest struggles for the scapegoat living in a toxic system is for them to differentiate between their part of the self that had to survive and adapt to the toxicity and their true self, so the self behind that protective, adaptive self. Carl Jung talked about the difference between the self, the lowercase self, or that could be synonymous to the Freudian way of describing the ego, and the capital self with the capital S, which is the self that is encompassing our whole psyche, both the conscious and unconscious parts. So the lowercase self, or the ego, is usually a mediator between different parts of our psyche. It mediates between our impulses and our drives, which Freud called the id, and between our norms and rules that we had to internalize from society, so between the id and the superego. Living in a toxic system, our ego develops in a way where it mediates the id that is severely suppressed and shamed, and it also mediates the superego that is really judgmental, harsh, and punishing, and not really in contact with reality. So for the scapegoat living in a toxic system, their lowercase self, or the ego, becomes an armor, a protective mechanism to survive the toxicity of the toxic system. So how do we get to our true self, the self behind the ego self? To accomplish that shift is to firstly prioritize observation and not reaction to our circumstances. So that means that when difficult circumstances become present, we do not react, but we observe and respond. One of the ways to come to our true self is also to work with our unconscious, may it be through dream work, through art, so creative processes, or through shadow work. And what also helps is that we are doing all of these things with a presence of a person who has done those things before and is safe for us to be in a relationship with them. So differentiating between our ego self and our true self is a daily task, especially if we grew up in a toxic system. But the main thing that we need to remember is that the ego reacts and our true self observes and trusts.